Good afternoon. Welcome to the September 27th policy session of the Phoenix City Council. We'll call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilwoman Ansari.
Here.
Councilman DeCiccio.
Here.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilwoman Guardado.
Here.
Councilwoman O'Brien.
Here.
Councilwoman Stark.
Here.
Councilman Waring.
Here.
Vice Mayor Pastor.
Here.
Mayor Gallego.
Here. Mario Barajas is with us to provide interpretation. Mario, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Hello, my name is Mario Barajas, and I will be serving as today's interpreter for today's policy session. I'll now take a moment to introduce myself to our Spanish-speaking audience. Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Mario Barajas y estaré sirviéndoles como el intérprete para la reunión del Consejo Municipal de Políticas. Voy a estar sirviéndoles a intérprete a los de habla hispana y deseamos pedirles de antemano, si es que van a estar dando un comentario público, por favor hable despacio, con claridad y evite tener distracciones de fondo. Finalmente, pause después de cada una o dos oraciones para que podamos interpretar lo que esté diciendo de la manera más completa posible. Gracias. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mario. We'll begin today with council information and follow-up requests, starting with Councilwoman Ansari, followed by Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have slides. Perfect. I want to start off by wishing everyone a happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Can go to the second slide. I do want to give a huge congratulations to Councilwoman Guardado, Councilmember Garcia, and our city's Economic Development and Phoenix Sister Cities team for throwing a wonderful El Grito celebration right outside City Hall. The number of local vendors that you all were able to support and people who showed up was incredibly impressive, and I had a great time being there. Next slide. I think our city may know that Bad Bunny is in town tomorrow. That's all that my chief of staff can talk about. Downtown Phoenix is going to be busy, and for those of you who couldn't snag tickets, I wanted to share that the Renaissance will be throwing a free neighborhood celebration to showcase all of the amazing local Puerto Rican cuisine one can enjoy here in Phoenix. As we all know, Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic have recently been hit with a devastating hurricane. Hurricane Fiona has left millions without electricity or running water this last week. My thoughts are with any Phoenicians who may have family members who have been impacted. This is another stark reminder of what our climate crisis does, produces more intense, costly storms. We don't see that here in Phoenix, but Fiona has already taken 16 lives according to reports. You can do your part to support local efforts by visiting donationforpuertorico.com. Next slide, please. What we do see here in Phoenix are heat-related deaths. As of this September, 209 deaths have been confirmed, and 216 remain under investigation. I am incredibly proud of the work that Dr. Hangela and the entire Heat Ready Phoenix and Volunteer Phoenix team have accomplished this heat season. My team has joined Yvonne and their crew in Levine and at the Human Services campus. Few statistics that I did want to share. There were 10,191 heat-related items distributed this year by the city of Phoenix, and 3,850 were the total number of contacts made, and 305 human services referrals made. I know we're about to close the heat relief tent on 9th Avenue in Jackson, but I did want to emphasize that I'm very much looking forward to a very detailed debrief this fall on how we can continue to work to reverse these alarming statistics, what worked, what didn't, and what additional resources we do need. Next slide. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the protests that are happening in Iran right now and across the world following the brutal killing of a 22-year-old young woman, Mahsa Amini, by the regime's morality police for not wearing the compulsory hijab correctly. I am a proud Iranian American who has spent the last 11 days watching the courageous women in Iran who are at the forefront of these historic demonstrations. For those who don't know, 60% of Iran's 84 million people are under the age of 30, and they have also been leading this movement for basic freedoms and human rights. I feel a huge responsibility to continue to lift the voices of Iranian people while an oppressive government is trying to silence them by blocking internet access, killing innocent people, and openly continuing to target women and minority groups. This Sunday, October 2nd, at ASU University Bridge in Tempe, there will be a solidarity rally and memorial vigil for Mahsa and the brave women of Iran starting at 5:30 p.m. All community members from all backgrounds and nationalities are invited to attend in solidarity. Closer to home, we are dealing with our own form of right-wing religious extremism that has led to a judge ruling that Arizona can enforce a near-total abortion ban that dates back to 1864. This law outlaws all abortions unless the mother's life is at stake. What it doesn't specify is how close the mother must be to death before a doctor can intervene with a life-saving abortion. Doctors will have to risk their own freedoms to save lives. And anyone who provides abortion services or assists in any way can face 2 to 5 years in prison. We need our doctors to be saving lives, and locking them up for doing so is reprehensible and disgusting. Next slide. On a more positive note, the deadline to register to vote is Tuesday, October 11th, and I encourage everyone to make their voice heard in this important election. And then finally, these are some of the dates in October to keep in mind where you can engage with my office. This Saturday, we will be in Levine for a community cleanup. Again, voter registration deadline is October 12th. On October 10th, there's a big Indigenous Peoples Day Phoenix Fest right here in downtown Phoenix outside the Churchill. October 13th, we will be doing mobile office hours in South Phoenix, exact location TBD. On October 15, we are working with the Estrella Village on a GAIN event at Santa Maria Park featuring a taste of Estrella with local food vendors. October 23rd, we are hosting our second annual Pride on the Block downtown as well. And then October 29th, taking part in the 7th annual Noche en Blanco. And as always, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office, either on social media, email, or phone for anything that you might need. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. I have PowerPoints now, trying to be more effective with our
And
time.
Councilwoman Guardado will. Wait.
Thank you so much. First of all, I wanted to start by wishing Mariana from our staff a happy birthday. And thank you for all the work you do. She's our policy lead. Next slide, please. We had some really good events. Thank you, Councilwoman Ansari. Councilwoman Guardado and I got to partner to do the El Grito event. We had 6,000 people join us for that event. It was beautiful, and thank everyone who helped out with that. We're able to get a hawk at Perry Park, or near Perry Park this week, and get it running and going. We've been doing a lot of work in that area, and we've had, I think, 2 or 3 pedestrians who passed away or died. So we're really excited for that hawk to be there and hopefully save some lives. I think a lot of us in the last week or on National Voter Registration Day went to different high schools to encourage youth to get registered. I was fortunate enough to be at Wilson Prep with youth and excited to get them involved in our democracy. For upcoming events, next slide, we've been working really hard at the Four Corners area on Broadway and 24th Street. We have a meeting next week on October 5th, 6 p.m. at Broadway Heritage Resource Center. Moving on forward and hopefully finishing up and getting an RFP by the end of the year to get that project going. We've had a movie in the park at Garfield this last week. It went great, and inviting folks to join us on October 22nd at 6 p.m. at Verde Park. We'll be showing Coco. And then next slide. So this one, a little bit of sad news, but it comes with good news moving forward. M&A was a design architect who worked on many projects throughout District 8 in the city of Phoenix. She passed away on January 14th, earlier this year. She inspired her colleagues through her persistence, high standards, and understanding that hard work can be joyful when great purpose is the driver. As a student and in her work, M&A believed that shaping the physical environment was important to nurturing people and communities. She was a peaceful, talented, and diligent champion for equity. Her work was about making something for others, using her talents to express what others could not draw, model, write, organize, or design for themselves. to improve the community and people's daily lives. She contributed to local as well as global architectural projects in higher education, healthcare, and justice. Her multi-studio legacy will live in the South Central Transit-Oriented Development Community Plan, Edison East Lake Impact Hub, and the Raza Development Fund Community Hub, among many other projects. So announcing her scholarship, with her inspiration, the National Organization of Minority Architects and Multi-Studio are offering a scholarship opportunity to honor her and her belief that design has the power in shaping places and community benefit. The scholarship is intended to support diversity within the student body and design schools by providing financial assistance to a NOMAS member for NOMAS student member that most embodies the spirit of NOMA AZ's core mission. The scholarship is not need-based, but rather merit-based. Arizona residency is not required. Application period closes on October 31st. That's it for my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And why don't we go to Councilwoman O'Brien and then get Councilwoman Guardado's slides up.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to remind everybody of an event that I am partnering with Councilwoman Stark and Phoenix Sister Cities for on October 8th at 5:30 p.m. at ASU West Campus. We'll be hosting a double 10-day celebration event. Double 10 Day, normally celebrated on October 10th, is Taiwanese Independence Day and celebrated all over the world as the day common Chinese people rose up against their feudal empire and became independent from the reigning dynasty. Celebrations have been held annually in Chinatown, San Francisco, Chinatown, Montreal, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and all over the world. As you know, with TSMC moving into the North Phoenix region, we have already been seeing an increase in new Taiwanese residents creating homes here in Phoenix, with many more on the way. We wanted to find a way to welcome them, celebrate their culture, and take the opportunity to introduce them to some of our culture, which is why we've partnered with ASU West to celebrate their Independence Day with a night market theme on ASU West campus. This celebration will encompass local vendors offering traditional Taiwanese cuisine, drinks, and crafts, as well as local Arizona vendors offering attendees a taste of our culture. For the kids, there will be games and entertainment, including traditional lion dances, Taiwanese yo-yo displays, and martial arts demonstrations. As the sun sets and the sky darkens, everyone will be asked to step outside to enjoy a firework display celebrating the event. I'd like to give a special thanks to our corporate sponsors, TSMC, Southwest Gas, APS, and the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Los Angeles. We look forward to having a great event and hope to see everyone there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilwoman Guardado and then Councilman Waring.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I just wanted to start by saying thank you to the over 6,000 residents who came out to our first annual El Grito event celebrated in downtown Phoenix, open to the public. I am very thankful for all the hard work that was done by my office and Councilmember Garcia's office, and also a big shout out to Chris Mackey and Rita Marco for all of their hard work, to the Arvizu family, and to all of our sponsors and everyone that helped us put this special night together. And I also wanted to thank our partners from the Mexican Baseball Fiesta for an awesome 2 nights of Mexican baseball in Maryville this past weekend. As we continue the celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, I want to thank all the families who came out to cheer on their favorite teams and dance to some great live music. As we approach October, it's an exciting time for us. We return to in-person GAIN events with our different neighbor groups. I'm very happy to be hosting the citywide kickoff for Phoenix GAIN events this Saturday, October 1st at Crystal Spectrum Mall from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Come on out to meet and connect with incredible neighborhood leaders who dedicate so much time and energy to uplifting our communities. October 15 will be a day filled of events for District 5. We're first going to start with West Plaza Neighborhood Association will be hosting their GAIN event from 9 a.m. to noon at La Pradera Park. El Caro Villas Block Watch will be hosting their event from 10 to 11:30 at the El Caro Villas Clubhouse. From noon to 4 p.m., our Parks and Recreation Department will be out with information, games, and goodies for kids at Holiday Park. And finally, our good friends at Parks RX and the County's Office of Nutrition and Active Living will be at Homestead Park for a family-friendly event and outdoor programming from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. And lastly, on a different note, I would like to offer my sincere condolences to the family of Ali Osman. Even prior to the tragic incident from this past Saturday, my office has been working with city management to increase CBA outreach in the 19th Avenue corridor. We must, as a city, do better in responding to these mental health crises in our community. In District 5, we embrace our diversity, and my heart is with our Muslim brothers and sisters as they mourn in this difficult time. I would like to also remind them that we are all one community, and we are here for all of them. In the coming weeks, I will be working closely with Chief Sullivan to ensure the needs of Ali's family and the larger community are met. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Waring.
Thank you, Mayor. So there's been one thing I don't think that's been mentioned at our meetings that will go noticed by everyone in the city, and that's the change in garbage pickup dates. So there's a lot of change coming starting next Monday, and if you want to know when your garbage is going to be picked up, go to Phoenix.gov/publicworks, all one word. I think they're going to give some dispensation till the end of the year if you put it out the wrong day. My day right now is Monday. I guarantee it. I'll have my thing out on Monday, and then when it doesn't get picked up, I'll have to figure out, oh, wait, it's actually Wednesday. So it'll take a little bit of getting used to, but should increase the efficiencies, and fuel consumption should go down and so forth. But so I hope people bear with us, but they should definitely know to look for that change. If you didn't get the card in the mail, you can go online and find your spot or date. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll wait for my slides. Thank you. The District 4 policy presentation. Next slide. Community meetings. We had a WebEx meeting with McDowell neighbors, live meeting with the Carnation neighborhood, and we were the first, as you see in this picture, having fun. We were at the end of the meeting, the first to host a meeting at the new cooperative co-working studio. This was after 2 hours debating zoning. So you can see we're still having fun. Next slide. Celebrating Lieutenant Fields. I am so proud of her. She won Elevating Women in Law Enforcement Award. I've worked very closely with her on many different things, and so I was really happy. And as you see, her mom, she's there with her mom and her kids, and we're just doing a fun picture. Next slide. District 4 interns. Crystal Mendoza is serving our country at the Naval Academy, and Hunter Franklin is at our nation's capital interning for Senator Sinema. So you can see as you intern in the city of Phoenix how you advance. So I'm so proud of them. Thank you. Next slide. Hispanic Heritage Month, Chop Guacamole Challenge. It's October 12th. 2022 at Chico Gallery. We will have different representatives from different parts of our Latin countries, and it is from 5:30 to 7:30. If you are interested, you are more than welcome to join us. I would like to thank Fry's and Chico for sponsoring. There will be a $10 admission suggested for Chico and some programming for the arts, so thank you. Next slide. Coffee chat. Tomorrow is our coffee chat at 8:30. You will learn about the 27th Avenue Action Plan, and it's at 4016 North Black Canyon Highway.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We will next go to a discussion of our budget, and I will turn it over to our Assistant City Manager, Lori Bays.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, members of the council. Budget and Research Director Amber Williamson will spend the next few moments walking you through our financial performance for fiscal year 21-22. As the report and presentation will show, we find ourselves in a very favorable financial position. Because of your leadership, direction, and commitment to sound financial stewardship, we find ourselves in a much stronger position than many of our peer cities. This financial position will be extremely important as we navigate the volatile economy, labor negotiations, and other legislative challenges that will threaten the city's various revenue streams. Decisions on how to best use this position will come later in the year as budget and research staff work to develop the 5-year forecast and general fund status in the spring. I'll now turn it over to Amber for the presentation.
Thank you, Lori. Mayor, members of the council, and the public, happy to be here today to talk about our 21-22 general fund budget results. I'll start by going over our resources, which ended the year. Hold on just a moment. For some reason it stopped working. Sorry. Try that again. Sorry. So our resources ended the year $31.7 million above the forecast. Our expenditures ended the year $7.3 million below the forecast, arriving at an ending balance variance of $39 million above forecast. I'll also talk about some challenges we're going to be facing as it pertains to the budget and constructing the 23-24 budget, and then talk about next steps in the budget development process, including rolling out our Fund Phoenix tool in November to the public, and then finally asking for council action today to adopt the 23-24 budget calendar. So we'll start by talking about our general fund resources for 21-22. Resources include our beginning fund balance, revenues, and net interfund transfers. As you can see by the chart on the screen, the blue bar represents the estimate, which was $1,663 million. Our actual resources for the fiscal year, represented by the green bar, ended at $1,694.7 million, for a variance of $31.7 million, or 1.9% more than estimate. This does account for one-time additional resources that will carry forward in the fund balance and will be taken into account as we construct the status. As Lori mentioned, I'll bring that back to you in February. So for our general fund expenditures, this represents the cost to deliver programs and services to the community, primarily made up of the cost for our city employees. For 21-22, our estimated expenses were $1,477.6 million. We ended the year at $1,470.3 million for a variance of just $7.3 million, or 0.5% under the estimate. This was primarily made up of additional vacancy savings. As I'll talk about in a moment, with challenges facing the budget, city departments are having a hard time filling positions. We have around 1,000 vacant general fund positions. So any savings as a result of those expenditures carry forward just like the resources and our fund balance, and will be taken into account when we construct the status. So when we take our resources less our expenses, we arrive at an ending general fund balance that was estimated at $185.4 million, ended the year at $224.4 million, $39 million more than estimate. As Lori had mentioned, this is good news. We start the fiscal year in a good position with our general fund balance, and we'll take that into account, as I've already mentioned, in constructing the budget for next year. So I want to spend some time talking about challenges or demands that will be facing the general fund as we move forward. I've talked to you before, Council, about the continued pressure that pension puts on our general fund budget. It represents almost 25% of our operating expenses, particularly for public safety. As you can see, the chart on the screen, the blue bar represents police pension expense. The red bars represent fire pension expense. You can see those actual costs from 21-22 going back to 16-17, that increasing trend. We expect that to continue over the next several years through 26-27. This was information we received from the public safety actuary. We built those projections into the last 5-year forecast I presented to council last February. It is suggesting we'll see increases anywhere from 45 to 50 million. We will be updating those projections. We'll receive the updated actuary reports from both the civilian and the public safety actuaries in December. Other challenges we know, or demands on general fund resources that the council will have to take into account, is the ability to offer competitive, fair, and affordable compensation packages for our employees. We're going to start negotiating again in December with the labor groups. We also know we have the classification and compensation study. We should have the recommendations from that in the spring. Both of those are anticipated to result in increased demand for general fund resources. As I talked with the council last spring when we presented the 22-23 budget, we want to make sure we have resources available to competitively pay our employees, but do so in a way that's sustainable and affordable. Every 1% in total compensation for the general fund is roughly $12 to $14 million. So we'll want to be careful as we move forward to make sure the numbers that we present to you in the spring with an updated status, that you take that into account as you make your budget decisions. We also know, in addition to rising pension costs, we have rising costs for other fringe benefits, including health insurance, for example. We'll be building those costs as well into the expenditure forecasts. We also know we have growing needs for city facility maintenance needs as well as vehicle replacements. We do have a backlog in our general fund vehicle fleet. We know that every dollar that's appropriated for general fund maintenance and vehicles does not go as far because of inflation. Just received information from our Public Works Department. They are seeing increases in costs for vehicles upwards of 20%, particularly for our fire apparatus. So we may need to consider, as we move forward in constructing the budget, do we need to appropriate more money for vehicle replacement needs just to keep pace with what we were planning on replacing? We also know we need to adequately fund our city trust funds. We are statutorily and have a fiduciary responsibility to do so. This includes trust funds, including self-insurance reserve as well as workers' compensation. We also know that the community expects expanded and new services. We want to make sure ongoing, for the long term, we have resources in the budget to be able to meet those expectations. I do want to mention, over the last 2 fiscal years, we have added $60 million in general fund additions, roughly 500 positions. City departments are struggling, as I mentioned, to fill those positions and to execute those program additions. So as we bring an updated status to the council, bear in mind that expanding or adding new additional service would somewhat be a challenge for departments, as they haven't executed what's already been added in the budget, and having to balance that with the need to do employee compensation increases. I also want to just spend a moment talking about the challenges we have with forecasting revenue. It's very difficult in this current environment to do this, particularly as a result of coming out of the pandemic and now dealing with what we see going on in the economy. It's rather volatile, it's uncertain. We hear from economists we're either in a recession, we're heading into a recession in 2023. We know we have high inflation. Not certain, obviously, at this point what that could mean directly to Phoenix revenues. That's why we monitor it very closely. We look at our revenue every month. We study the data. We look at what our trusted experts are saying with our university partners, those at the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, and other economists. This is just to mention that as we go to construct revenue estimates, it is incredibly challenging to try to accurately predict where we're going to be. So we want to try to be prudent and cautious, as we always are, and not overestimate what our revenue growth could be. Other challenges with the budget: legislative action that could result in reductions to revenue. We know in the last legislative session there was an attempt to prevent cities and towns from collecting residential rental sales tax. If the legislature were to seek to do this again, this would have a pretty big negative impact to the general fund on an ongoing basis. Looking over the next few years, it could be anywhere from $42 to $46 million just for the general fund. For all funds, $81 to $88 million. It does impact other special revenue funds, such as Transportation 2050, Public Safety Specialty Funds, and Parks and Preserves. So we will be monitoring that very closely as we move through the legislative session. Also, we know our Phoenix population is growing. This is good news, fastest growing metro as a result of the 2020 census. However, our state shared revenues are calculated based off of relative population share, and that has been decreasing over the past several years. We're going to see an estimated decrease to general fund revenues on an ongoing basis because of that, of roughly $6 to $7 million. We'll be incorporating that negative impact into our updated revenue projections. So next steps in terms of budget development: we just wrapped up the annual salary and benefit projection review process. This is where we work with city departments to accurately as we can project where salaries and benefits for city employees are going to be for this year and next year. Next, we're going to move into the month of October and November, doing our 3+9 technical expenditure reviews. This is the time of year where we do a deep dive, a line item analysis on expenses with city departments for all the programs and services they provide based off existing levels to try to estimate those costs for this year and next year. December, we'll do central reviews. This is where we do analysis and do projections on citywide expense items such as pension, fuel, and electricity. We'll be working all through these months to develop updated revenue estimates. All of this will come together with a preliminary general fund status and 5-year forecast I'll present to you on February 21st. Fund Phoenix in November. Over the last 2 years, we've been rolling this tool out to the public earlier in the budget process to try to start getting feedback about what residents would like to see in the budget. We'll be updating it with the 22-23 budget. We'll be bringing to the council starting in December with the general information packets, any comments we get on the budget directly to Budget and Research, as well as the tool, so you can take that into account as you're considering budget decisions. So for the 23-24 budget calendar, as I mentioned, November Fund Phoenix, February 21st is the preliminary general fund status and 5-year forecast. March 21st, we'll bring to you a proposed trial budget in the preliminary capital improvement program. In April, we'll take the budget to the community as we do every year. May 2nd, scheduled for city manager's budget decisions. May 16th, final council action on the budget. That's a critical step in the process. Without that, we cannot move into what is legally required to do, which is our budget adoption steps. May 31 would be tentative adoption, June 14th is final adoption, and then July 3rd, it concludes with property tax adoption. So today, as I mentioned, we are asking for action from the council to adopt the 23-24 budget calendar. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your hard work in putting together this presentation, doing forecasting in incredibly uncertain times. We have worked hard to be fiscally responsible, and we appreciate all the work that goes into that. And even with the positive news about a small surplus, we have some looming economic issues on the horizon. We'll go first to Councilman Waring.
Thank you, Mayor. So you guys in your shop and your predecessor should be complimented because you're right. Forecasting is extremely hard. It's like trying to pick the Super Bowl winner every year, which Sports Illustrated and all those so-called experts always get wrong. But you guys have been pretty spot on accurate for really about 10 years now. And this isn't the first time we've had uncertainty or kind of a strange climate. You had COVID and everything. I mean, and there have been other downturns too. This isn't the first in the last decade. So, but I appreciate you qualifying it, saying it's tough to do and don't count on us being able to do that again. I do appreciate that candor, but I also think you were kind of selling yourself short on that because that's been a skill you guys have been incredibly adept at and deserve a lot of credit because that really helps make informed decisions. I mean, it may sound like a small thing, but to have a really accurate confidence in you guys from sitting up here to make decisions is, I think, really helpful. But there are a lot of uncertainties, and I think you and I, when we talked individually, you kind of mapped some of those out, like kind of worst case scenarios. The pension stuff, that's been around for a long time. It's sort of a known. It actually looked like, if I'm not wrong, on your charts, the trajectories kind of flatten as we go further out. Are those real numbers? I don't know how else to phrase it, but I think you know what I mean. Or is that just sort of, that's our guess because it's so far out we can't really tell?
Councilman Waring, Mayor, members of the council, that's a good question. So we rely on the public safety actuary to provide us projected employer contribution rates. We don't come up with those on our own. Those do assume that the plan hits their actuarial assumptions every year, which they don't. Some years when they don't hit their investment rate of return, for example, much like they didn't last year because of what was going on with the markets, that would put upward pressure on the rates. If they make other actuarial assumptions like changes to the payroll growth, which they have done also, that will put upward pressure on the rates. So we are seeing in the outer years it's starting to stabilize, but again, that assumes they hit every actuarial target and they don't make any changes to their assumptions. So we'll get updated rates again in December for both 23-24 and the out years from the actuary. I am anticipating those are going to be higher than what they were last spring when I presented the 5-year forecast, if I could take a guess. So to answer your question, we don't come up with those. The actuary provides those.
Okay, so those, I guess, Mayor, part of the reason I asked that question is you can't be held really responsible for these projections a few years out based on other people's numbers. And the stock market's down, probably like 20%. More or less probably since those numbers were provided to you, I'm guessing, because all that's happened relatively quickly. Am I wrong about the timing of that?
Councilman Waring, Mayor, members of the council, no, you're not incorrect about that. The rates that we used in the last 5-year forecast and what you're seeing on that chart were based off the actuarial evaluation as of June 30th, 2021.
Oh, yeah, well, so yeah, that's going to be markedly different. But it's still not unexpected. We've prepared for it as best we can. The rest of your projections that I saw weren't disastrous, even when you were modeling pretty disastrous situations for the economy as a whole. And I'm not saying it would be disastrous for individuals, but I'm talking about disastrous in terms of our budget, like can we do the stuff that we're obligated to do? Am I misreading that, or would you say that's a fair assessment?
Councilman Waring, Mayor, members of the council, I think that's a fair assessment. I think that the unknown is we're assuming that we're going to have growth in revenue. That's a big component of this. A lot of our revenue is made up of sales tax. That's very volatile. If we have legislative impacts that try to eliminate our ability to tax certain categories, that would be problematic. If we see an economic recession and our revenue starts to decline, it wouldn't take long to start to eat into the fund balance. Every 1% variance in revenue is roughly about $15 million. So that's why we watch it very closely. I don't want to present a doom and gloom scenario. It's good news that we have a significant fund balance as we move forward, and I think that Phoenix is poised to do well if we were to see an economic recession or a contraction, much as we did coming out of the pandemic. We led out of that. So there's a lot of strength, I think, in Phoenix economic fundamentals that would help us through that. It's just uncertain. And so when we look to economists and we're hearing that we're in a recession or we're going to be in a recession, I think it just gives us more of a reason, because of that additional uncertainty, to try to be more cautious with what we're estimating. I would rather come to you at the end of the fiscal year and have more money than what I estimated than come to you and I had less. So that's kind of the process we're going through, but it's a long-winded answer, I guess, to your question. But we do know we'll do what we have to do to try to present the best information to you. The city has a long-standing history of adopting balanced budgets and taking quick action when the council needs to make sure that the budget stays sustainable and balanced.
Well, I appreciate all the challenges that come with your job, and given all the uncertainty, it's amazing what you guys have been able to do in terms of giving us accurate information. But this is a very fluid situation. There's no doubt about it. I will say that fund balance, it looks like a lot of money on paper, but it really pays for a few weeks of operations if stuff really went to heck. So I know the state found that out during the Great Recession. I think it was maxed out because that was, if I remember right, statutorily capped, and I think the cap had been met, and it was hundreds of millions of dollars. Oh boy, we can that gets gobbled up in a heartbeat in a really serious recession. So we can't count on that to carry us through. It's good to have a balance. It's great that, we've been pocketing a few $1 million, pretty much every year. But, and your goal of trying to be over rather than under is certainly meritorious, to say the least. But, we have to be really cautious about the spending going forward with as many uncertainties as you're talking about. So, well, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Waring. I actually have a question for government affairs after Councilman DeCiccio goes. Councilman DeCiccio.
Am I up, Mayor? Well, thank you very much. And I want to thank staff, just like Jim did, on the presentation. I think they did an amazing job, and the forecast was outstanding. I mean, just by my, back of the napkin numbers, they came in at 2.7%. And if you're considered to have a 3.5% deviation, that's considered an outstanding number when a lot of forecasters are around 5%. So staff, you're at 2.7. That's huge. Congratulations to you for having a near perfect. It's like having a near perfect game in baseball. I mean, it wins a lot. So like Jim, and I want to just talk a little bit about the propensity to want to spend that $39 million that we're getting in. And I get the nature of it because people will want to spend it right away. But to be very careful on that. One of the things in business, you're always looking for what's called reoccurring income. Reoccurring income can take the form of many things from businesses. So when you're investing, you want to know what your return's going to be. Reoccurring income can end at times. Not end, but it doesn't work all the time. Whereas reoccurring debt occurs all the time. The debt clock doesn't take vacation, it doesn't take time off, and it doesn't take holidays. It is constantly going. As we're sleeping, debt accumulates. Likewise with the pension costs, and you've heard us talk about this before, but pension costs continue to accumulate over time, and they constantly are going. And so as we want to have the propensity to pay more, to spend more, to do those things, we're also putting other, future councils in debt. So if you look at your family, you always want to leave your family a little bit better off, or a lot better off if you can, than you did yourself. By spending more, by doing more, we're actually leaving future councils, future citizens of our city with a debt that is going to be insurmountable over time. And you don't ever want to do that. Like I said, you don't ever want to leave your family, your friends, anyone worse off than they were, than you were. So likewise with these debt and the propensity to want to spend it, you've got to be super careful. One other thing that I'd like to bring up too, and that's to Jeff, and I know you're looking at a $500 million bond. I think that might be a little bit too aggressive. I think you're probably pretty close on that. But when you look at the amount of debt that we're going to be incurring in the future with these pension costs, because we don't know what's going to happen next year. We have no clue what's going to happen next year. And that is problematic. And I know we want to get, I know we'd like to get that $500 million going, but I think that might be a little bit on the aggressive side and not as safe as we need to be, Jeff. So I appreciate all the work, but again, I'm just going to caution people. This money is a small amount, but it can go a long ways when we reach a really difficult time. And that debt clock will never, ever stop. It goes all the time. And that reoccurring debt is a problem for future councils and future citizens of Phoenix, and we don't want to leave them off worse off than we are today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman DeCiccio and Amber both teed this up a little bit with reoccurring revenue, and Amber had mentioned some of the bills from last session, but question for Lauren with Government Affairs. Can you talk to us about some of the things happening at the state legislature that might impact our revenue?
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Toward the end, I should say, of last session, Senate Bill 1116 was introduced, which would have eliminated the city's ability to charge rental transaction privilege tax, not just for the city of Phoenix, of course, but statewide. It would have eliminated that ability. And that bill came very, very close to passing. So I think that is a very realistic possibility in this upcoming legislative session, that bill comes back or one like it. And beyond that, I think that generally revenue that cities are charging in tax revenue particularly is going to be in the sights of the legislature more broadly. So that rental, that money from rental sales tax is just one aspect. Let's say we moved it to another sales tax type revenue source. I think that the legislature would be likely to target that as well.
Thank you. I think that's very helpful context for us making decisions. And Amber, will you say one more time what was the total impact of that residential rental?
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, for the general fund over the next 3 years, it's estimated to be anywhere on an annual basis from 42 to 46 million. All funds 81 to 88 million. Again, that does impact the general fund, which provides our core programs and services, as you know, like public safety, human service type programs. And then also it would affect our public safety specialty funds, as well as parks and preserves and transportation 2050.
Great. So it's our public transit system, block watch dollars, a huge number of things that are funded and allocated from sales tax, including taxes on residential rentals. And anything for our Government Affairs Director?
Just to add additional context, they have come after the rental tax for years. The changing dynamics of the legislature has made this, like Lauren said, we were able to kill it by one vote last year. So there are candidates who have said it's a number one priority to end. They're also targeting the food tax for cities who still have food tax. So the environment in this upcoming year for this to be on the chopping block very high, to succeed on it, if we're looking at it today, very high. This election will dictate very, very much on how it's being looked at in the legislative session.
Wonderful. Thank you. Councilmember Garcia.
Mayor,
we'll go to Councilmember Garcia and then Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to see that we have a good financial outlook for next year's budget. I think the priority of the council should be to use the extra funds for employee compensation. I really do think that that's where we should focus. We still have a lot of vacancies, and a lot of departments aren't able, especially the ones that are out, facing and serving the public. They're not able to do what we need them to do. I know we still have about 33 positions that are under $15 an hour, and many of those positions are also community facing. A lot of these concerns, we had one particular department get increases to the point where they're the highest paid employees in the state, and none of these concerns were brought up. And I understand there's differences in funds, but I really hope that as we're...
And I wholeheartedly agree with Councilman Garcia. I think our employees should be our number one priority. I remember during the Great Recession, the sacrifices that our employees made, taking days off without pay and losing.
Able to add the night service back, so we can't add new service. Hearing the same thing in parks with delays around construction. I think, the Cesar Chavez Community Center is one example of a community center that I think it was when I first started, it was supposed to be completed by next summer, and now it's this fall. And every department is saying that, so I really hope that we can prioritize that this upcoming budget cycle. And otherwise, I think we're going to see significant issues and significant constituent frustrations with all of us at the city if we can't fill those positions. Also, just want to add, I know this is about the general budget, but when it does come to ARPA and the review of what is remaining from our allocations and what maybe wasn't spent, I think with the fact that we are seeing 13% inflation and so many families struggling and another rise in, we just got an updated street count that we're back to over 1,000 people outside the Human Services campus, so clearly people are struggling. I really hope that we can use those dollars for the things that are really needed, like more free bus passes, rent and utility assistance, and meals to homebound seniors, among many other things. Thank you.
Councilwoman Guardado.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I sound a little bit of a broken record every time we talk about compensation and the workers, but also, I really think we got to look very wholeheartedly. The fact that we have all these positions that are open, that we're sitting here, we're saying that there's programs that we're not running, things that we're not doing because we cannot hire the folks to be able to do the jobs. And I think that's why I think it's very important that if we prioritize anything moving forward, is the salaries, is the jobs, because I think it is sad that we have all these open positions because we cannot fill them, and I'm sure it's because we're not paying enough. So I really think that, we have the money there. I really think we need to be a little bit more aggressive. I know that we're looking for the comp study to be done in March, and I know that everyone is working really hard to get it done sooner, but the more we wait, the longer it's going to take for us to fill these positions. I still continue to get reports of all the workers that are leaving the city because we do not pay enough. So I'm hoping that we're able to make some of these changes faster, sooner rather than later, because I do think that we are hurting. We're doing all these changes throughout the city because we don't have enough workers. I know that I drive around the neighborhood and I see all the bulk of trash that has not been picked up. And this is a huge challenge that we have. I hear it from the fire department as well. Our minutes to be able to respond to someone, that their life might be in danger. That's a huge issue, and I really think that we, take some sort of aggressive approach and try to make some of these changes soon, because we have a city that is hurting. We have workers that need the compensation, but then we also have residents that continuously call our office for a lot of these different issues. I appreciate the hard work, but I would ask that we figure out a way, how do we move some of this stuff faster? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mayor. So you mentioned the 1,000 vacant general fund positions, but in addition, so that includes the 500 we added last budget cycle?
Councilwoman O'Brien, Mayor, members of the council, that's correct. 500 positions were added over the last 2 fiscal years. So some of those positions that were added have been filled, but as we fill positions, we're losing people as well. So some of them remain vacant. So it's a combination of the two.
Okay, and then what steps are we taking to fill those positions or get them filled?
So, Mayor, Councilwoman O'Brien, members of the council, that's an excellent question, and it's a multifaceted answer. So we're doing quite a few things. Some of the things that we're doing are including hiring incentives for some positions, especially those that are harder to fill. We are also doing more aggressive advertising through social media than we've ever done before, and doing some additional levels of marketing, trying to explain how we can how we offer opportunities to folks that they may not realize are there, and the different opportunities within the city, as well as the excellent benefits that we offer. We're also doing something with starting pay in many of our positions where we don't start folks at step 1, as has typically been the tradition. We have approved in many cases a higher starting step for positions that are harder to fill, so that someone may come in at step 3 or step 5, wherever the appropriate market range is for that position, so that we can attract more candidates. Now, in doing that, we don't leave anyone behind. Others who are not at that level as well would move up to that same point. But those are things that we can do within the tools that are available to departments right now to attract individuals to city employment, and we are utilizing all of those tools right now in most departments.
And in addition, using tools that are available to you to retain our employees, because it's, you know, we might attract them, but if we're not retaining folks, that we're creating a bigger problem.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. We are actually employing retention incentives as well. So the council has approved retention incentives for existing employees. So we are beginning to see more requests for those from departments and applying those in order to retain quality employees as well.
And so I know this is there's a fine line or a balance to things as we have brought all our employees back to work. And I know that I've had complaints about folks, you know, not being able to get in to see people in customer service positions in City Hall, but I also am hearing about situations where we've taken away work at home options from folks who are not forward facing. So I hope we certainly will evaluate that more closely to make sure that we really are utilizing tools that don't cost us money to ensure we're retaining employees as well in that area too.
Yes, Mayor, Councilwoman O'Brien, if I could just respond to that quickly. Yes. What we are doing with that is we're going through a process with our departments who have teleworking or remote working employees to identify which positions can continue to do that in perpetuity, with the expectation that departments would identify if they cannot telework in perpetuity, that position, that they would bring forward an explanation as to why. So the assumption would be that they would be able to continue to do that unless there is an operational reason that they need to do their work in the workplace, in which case then they would be approved to bring those employees back into the workplace to do their daily
In
work.
addition, could they have, I mean, some folks don't, it could be not necessarily an either or, right? Have a flexible option. I can recall that when I got out of college and started my first big girl job, so to speak, we went from, you know, having to work 5/8s. We had the option to work 4/10s, and you know, there were growing pains in that, and which employees had which days off. But it did things like have less cars on the streets, and certainly even, I hate to age myself, but 30 some odd years ago, you know, pollution and traffic and saving all of that was important then. I know it's not, back then it seemed just as important as it does today, but I hope we would also look at offering flexible options where it could be split 3-1, 2, however that might work, in being, you know, trying to offer that as an option for folks.
Absolutely.
And then I had, I think, another question. Amber, could you just touch again on the our population share with state revenue? Just say that one more time. I want to make sure I got my notes correct on that.
Yes, Councilwoman O'Brien, Mayor, members of the council. So our state shared revenues, that's state shared income tax, vehicle license tax, and sales taxes, it's based off of relative population. Okay. So how we compare to other cities and towns. And while Phoenix is growing, so are other cities. So our relative percentage share declines, it has been declining every year for several years. And it's going to do it again starting in this current year. So that $6 to $7 million impact, that is an ongoing revenue impact, and we'll be building that into our updated revenue estimates.
Excellent, thank you. And then Lauren, you talked about, we talked about the residential rental sales tax being under attack for many years, but then potentially food taxes. Are there other taxes that are on that list and that we should be aware of?
None that have had legislation introduced about them, at least in the last two legislative sessions. That doesn't mean they're not being considered, but I haven't, I guess, heard any discussion about that in the background either, any specifics. Not to say that we couldn't draw attention to one if we were to propose it, but I haven't heard that ongoing at this time.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And Lori, as you were mentioning our employee benefits, the one enhancement that I hear the most about out in the community is people are very excited about the parental leave policy, and I think that is a good news policy. Also want to applaud the city manager for taking on looking at the census and making sure that we had the most accurate count possible, because that is a chance to address deficiencies in the census and maybe get us a little bit more of our fair share of both state and federal funds. Did I get everyone? Vice Mayor.
I want to go back to the rental tax, because I think that's going to be critical, and we are going to have a very difficult conversation, because I believe what's going to happen, it will be removed. So could you please once again tell us what we will be losing?
Yes, Vice Mayor, Mayor, members of the council. So the estimated ongoing annual general fund impact is anywhere from 42 to 46 million. But then the total all funds, that would include public safety specialty funds, transportation 2050, and parks and preserves, is anywhere from 81 to 88 million. So as we continue to move forward in the budget development process and we get more information from our government relations team and what's happening at the legislature, we'll bring to the council in February, probably as well as in March, if we're seeing that that's really a likelihood, options for the council to consider and how to offset that revenue loss. And I don't know at this point what that could look like. I don't have a status yet to know if the status can absorb that impact for 23, 24, and 24, 25. I also don't know when it would be effective. If it would be effective in July of 23, or they would try to phase it in. So we need to get more information, but we would come to the council with potential solutions on how to resolve that ongoing revenue loss. It certainly puts us in a position, if that were to happen, it's less resources we have to do things like employee compensation increases or future additions to programs and services for the community in the out years. But we'll come back to the council once we have more information and, like I said, options on how to offset that loss if we really believe that's going to happen in 23, 24.
Okay, thank you, because I think that conversation needs to be had now for that possibility. I know it's not a doom and gloom, but there is the strongest possibility in any point in time that will happen to us. The other piece is that we keep growing and we keep pushing growth. However, our services are not growing, and our quality of services, we're lacking it. From what, you're talking to a girl that grew up in the city, so I understand the dynamics of what was back 10 years ago, even 15 years ago, or what we're getting today. And it's not the employees' fault, because they are providing the service that they have. It's the fact that we don't have employees, and the importance of having and recruiting and retaining our employees. So compensation is critical. I know that the generations that we are trying to attract it's their salary. It's not their pension. It's not their vacation. It's not their sick days. They want the salary. They want it today. They don't want it tomorrow. And it is important to them, but they want to be able to live, have a vibrant a life now, and not like my parents' generation and maybe me, where life-work balance is that's not part of my vocabulary, but it is part of their vocabulary, and it's part of my kids' vocabulary of like, we want to be able to do these things. And so I think that's another key that we're going to have to look at. But when we look at that, we also have to maintain all our knowledge and be able to retain them. And so that's the whole balance that happens within a budget and a compensation, which I don't know how any faster we can move. I think what's going to happen is we as a council, or some of us, are just going to say we're moving just because of the vacancies. And I don't want to be in that situation, but we are in that situation. And so how do we balance those pieces? So I think it's great that we have a surplus, but as I'm talking to my community and saying this is the one-time fund and this is the general fund, is that a want or is that a need for our community at this moment? And what are our needs that need to happen? Because I don't want to be in the situation when I entered where I was making some decisions as to why didn't we maintain this building? Why didn't we hire our public safety, fire and police? Why didn't we maintain the growth or what we needed to maintain in order to be there? I want to be very thoughtful in how we move forward because of all these different elements that are going to hit us. And we're going to have to make some tough decisions. But thank you for the work that you're doing.
Councilwoman Ansari.
I have two questions based off of that, and I will echo the point about pensions. As someone who has a team that is pretty much all under the age of 30, except for one, the pension removal with the salary is very, very jarring to people, and I know that it takes a very rare young person, I think, right now to want to accept a job at a much lower salary than the private sector and then to get the pension removed. I don't know what can be done about that, but I do think that's a huge deterrent for younger people to want to work at the city. And then I was also wondering, and I think this is a question for you, Lori, and I've only heard this anecdotally, but I have heard that it can be difficult for city staff to move from one department to another, and they not getting the same sort of HR support or incentives as new hires, and maybe having a more difficult time going up a level. So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that policy and if you think there's any improvements that can be made there for the retention aspect.
Mayor, Councilwoman Ansari, I guess I'd have to better understand the circumstances. I do know that sometimes there are challenges moving from one department to another based on the experience that the employee has, whether that's, a lack of supervisory experience or something like that, and moving to the next position that they, want to move to for their career path. Other than that, I don't know if you might be referring to something that I have heard about, which is that sometimes in a promotional process, employees do not always have the same opportunities for incentives as far as like the hiring incentives and things that a new hire would have. So that may be what you're referring to. I'm really not clear, so maybe we can talk more about the specifics of that.
I don't know, I'm sure you all within HR do, conversations with staff about what's working, what's not working, but I think that could be something, and I think even doing a pilot where you talk to younger employees, because I think, I don't know, oftentimes I feel in a bureaucratic system there's also a very, strict hierarchy or certain things that you're looking for a certain position, but oftentimes young people are very ambitious and bright and do, a ton of work for very little, and they're not getting the same sort of acknowledgement that they maybe deserve at a higher level. So just some things to think about, and I would love to talk to you about that further.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Seeing no additional questions, that is our final agendized item for today, so we are adjourned.
Were we supposed to, we're supposed to do a motion to vote on the calendar?
Please, thank you to our city
We'll
clerk
make a
and
motion.
Councilwoman O'Brien. Vice Mayor.
I make the motion to move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments? Voice vote? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We are adjourned.